You're with Julie Copeland, and I've just been up in that part of the world, Mildura in fact, with its contrasts of bleak, semi-arid landscape and rich horticulture, irrigated by our mighty stricken Murray River. And I was there to talk to today's maker, Harry Nankin. Harry began as a commercial wilderness photographer, but over the last 10 years he's developed a unique alchemy which uses nature rather than a camera to make his images, this time in the Meringa Flora and Fauna Reserve outside Mildura. I'm in the Mildura Art Centre in the gallery with Harry Nankin, and we're surrounded by these large photograms, I'm never sure what the difference is, which are his latest series of photograms called Contact. I mean, you're an urban person and you've been doing this kind of thing for a long time, going out there into the moonlight and, if not communing with nature, certainly using it to make these wonderful, weird shapes and ghostly kind of images. This particular site is a fairly scrubby, uninspiring piece of land in the Mallee, isn't it? Which is bush, but it's just surviving, really.
Yes, I become, shall we say, totally embroiled in and immersed in the idea of the Mallee and this kind of landscape. Dealing with such a difficult landscape, difficult in all sorts of ways. It's hot, it's dry, it's flat, it's not consistent with any European notion of beauty, is, in a sense, pushing the limits of my own aesthetic challenges, my own ideas about how we might reframe our thinking about what is beautiful. And so I suppose the Mallee has offered me that opportunity. I still find it a difficult landscape, but it's I suppose the minutiae, the intimacy of dealing with 1 3 square kilometre nature reserve, completely surrounded by farmland, but going back again and again and spending days and nights walking through this landscape has had an effect. And you begin to love something because you're familiar with it and because you see it in different seasons with different light, at night and in daytime, and you see what you wouldn't normally see. That is, you see something as beautiful, something more three-dimensional, more complex than you do by passing in a car at 100 kilometres an hour.
I don't detect a kind of an ecological concern or an environmental message. I mean, you have, in fact, in the past, with your commercial photography work for the Australian Conservation Foundation, and obviously are concerned about the degradation and the destruction of a lot of our natural landscape, what's left of it. Australians haven't been very good at looking after their unique natural environment. But I don't think your work's about that, is it? It's not, or perhaps I'm wrong. Does it have an environmental message?
Well, when I was a wilderness photographer, there was a clear link between the making of the images and conservation campaigns. And, I made the work, at least in part, for that reason. But there was also just an individual personal desire to make the images for their own sake as well. I think since moving from being a photographer to being an artist, which is really what happened when I shifted out of wilderness photography into this current practice, I recognised the problem of being overtly, consciously political with the making of art, because with very rare exceptions, I think when you try to make the work for a campaign or be political, it actually weakens it as art, and that's my experience anyway. And I've made the decision some years ago to separate my political life, if you like, my ecological concerns and other concerns from what I actually make. It's not that the work is made regardless of those concerns. It's just that I think art works in other ways than directly through the political process.
So, Harry Nankin, this is your latest work, but I think we should go back a bit and see what has led to this particular series of photograms or shadowgrams, and the way it might connect with what you've been doing really in the last 10 years and how this whole technique has developed.
Well, Julie, I moved to that from wilderness photography as a result of a series of questions and problems I found with the practice of wilderness photography. For me, there were 2 principal issues. The one was objectifying nature, making it into a kind of commodity, whether consciously or unconsciously. Photographers of landscape, of wilderness, do that, both in the form of the products that they produce, but also in making the landscape itself into something desirable to use in some way, even just simply as an aesthetic commodity. And there's also the problem of idealising, I think, that photography of wilderness has tended to confirm rather than undermine our sort of desire to, our Western traditions, if you like, of framing the world, the visual world, of looking for the most, if you like, aesthetically pleasing environments. So it tends to select, wilderness photography tends to select only those kind of environments which fulfil that Western aesthetic of, drama, colour, richness, lushness, and so forth.
But that's our attraction to beauty, surely, and that's a big factor in art of any kind, and a photograph being an artefact, that we are, of course, we are naturally attracted to our idea of beauty, of beautiful things.
Well, I suppose my agenda was, and still is, to try and redefine beauty, not rejecting it by any means, but to redefine it away from the modernist and Western traditions a little bit anyway. I mean, for example, the tradition of the single point perspective, monocular vision, the notion of the frame, the picturesque tradition, the sublime tradition. These ideas are, to me, deep within our culture and deeply problematic because they confirm a kind of separation, a deep existential, spiritual and material separation between us and nature. And I'm trying to kind of find a way around that.
Today's maker is the photo artist Harry Nankin, whose most extraordinary project involved immersing huge sheets of photographic paper in the ocean. This latest series of cameraless photograms in the Mildura Art Gallery is called Contact. This technique you've developed of shadowgrams or photograms, where I think you've said, in effect, the landscape itself is the camera. This is a cameraless method of working. So you better just describe it to us in the way in which the shadowgrams work and how you actually employ all this kind of biological technology, namely the plants, the water, the tides, the moonlight, to produce these works.
Well, this current series, I'm taking large sheets of film about the size of a door, about 2 metres by 3/4 metres, and I'm placing them in the bush, or in this case a site in the Mallee called Merringa Flora and Fauna Reserve. And I place them on the ground, the film on the ground, and expose it to the light of flash and or moonlight, with the object on top of it. In this case, in this project, kangaroo carcasses that I've found on the site. But I, or we, depending on if I'm with other people or not, build a large tripod out of pieces of aluminium and various bits and pieces on site, just above where the exposure is going to be. That tripod will be a little over 2.5 metres high, and then I have a portable flash, a very large flash, that I attach to the centre, the apex of that, facing down. And then after dark, this is all set up during the day. The work is, as with all these works, is carefully planned, measured, planned, worked out with one's mind's eye during the daytime. And then after darkness has fallen, I use safe lights, just dolphin lamps with red filters, to guide the positioning of the carcass onto the film. And the film, of course, is rolled out after dark. And then once everything's in position, the flash is triggered, and after that the carcass is taken off the film and the film is rolled up, ready for processing in Melbourne. For slightly high-level upright subjects such as bushes and low trees, I build a scaffold during the day, and I insert the film, even weave it through the vegetation after dark. These are all done in darkness, but they're all planned in daylight quite meticulously, and they take sometimes days to plan.